Hello, boys and girls. It's the HooDoo man coming to you today. Today I'm doing a little teaching for y'all. Something that most people don't know unless they go fishing for it. Okay, our slave ancestors or our enslaved ancestors used the Bible in many of their workings. Recipe, witches and shit call it spells. Hoodoos used to call it recipes. Now they say spells too. Okay, recipe and spells kind of synonymous. But spell is good too because it's it's talking about speaking something as well as using some roots and leaves or whatever into existence. Have you ever wondered why they call being able to put numbers, put letters on a tablet, some paper, uh, goddamn, whatever, in a book, and another person can come and look at it and know what I'm thinking, know what I'm saying? They call it spell because if you go to the Bible, Genesis, it talks about Adam and Eve in the garden. It talks about Adam and Eve partaking of the tree of knowledge, and their eyes were open, and there would be nothing. Uh, I think it was like man, it was nothing that man could not. I think that was when they was in Babylon, nothing that man wanted to do when they come together couldn't do. And that God said, man, man is like us now. He has the knowledge of good and evil. Excuse me, folks. The knowledge of good and evil meant the knowledge of everything. It meant man was able to reason logically with the brain to know the secrets of the universe, or some of them, that is. Like the gods, as the book calls them, the Elohim, that was here at that time. And that I guess it's still here in one of those dimensions. I'm going to tell you, do you want to know what that is? The whole thing is about when man discovered agriculture. And thus from agriculture and from acquiring, man also stumbled onto read and write. And I'm gonna tell you why it is. Okay. Reason that is because before man, well, female, it's believed that widely believed that women came onto agriculture because they had digging sticks and little digging sticks, and would dig the roots out and collect the roots, bring them back to the village, what have you, for eating, for preparing and eating and shit. Men hunted. They went out and did the hard job. Well, both of them are hard, but in both of the men did the dangerous work as usual, as they're supposed to. And so somewhere along the line, women discovered that if a seed from that particular plant drops and is covered with dirt somehow, it will sprout a duplicate of itself. Regeneration. I guess they would see. Like everything was kind of seasonal. This grew this time. This grew that time. And I guess about 30 days, they cultivated, they harvested some plants, roots, whatever. And then about 30 days later, they came back, and they probably didn't pay attention, but one particular time, some unknown female, perhaps, found this phenomenon. Some people say it was a snake who showed man this by crawling on the ground and accidentally covering up the seeds with his crawling, or either dug into the ground to get the seeds and ate them. And then the women saw that maybe some of those, that some of that, like say a wheat plant was growing where he had dug some, where this snake had dug some of the seeds out, but where he didn't, he was growing to another wheat plant, and therefore, boom, you got agriculture. Now, when they got agriculture, they got to where they could accumulate at one place and not have to always be nomadic and chasing whatever, chasing, They could stay at one place, and that's when everybody didn't have to plant, to have to dig roots and hunt all the time. They learned agriculture so they could stay at one place. And some people begin to do this, and some people begin to do that. And some people accumulated more food, and so they probably put it in a basins and had it stored up somewhere. And if this guy had say 20 barrels, they had to put slashes 1, 2, 3, 4, about 20 slashes. And this guy had 10, they put 10, and that developed into reading and writing because the guy that had 20 slashes, somebody decided, in whatever language, Sumerian language probably, or the Egyptian language, whatever, Kushite language, that this number of slashes meant 20. So from that came reading and writing. That meant that man was able to pass on knowledge accumulated from one generation to another. So God said, man is like us now to know good and evil, from good from evil, meaning everything under the stars. But he said, least man take hold and eat a tree with eternal life, he'll be like us. He said, man will be like us, least he take hold. Eat a tree of life. Because the tree of life would have meant if man could live forever, that the knowledge accumulated in one generation, man would live forever with that knowledge. And so therefore be like God, like the gods. Gods, plural. So if man died, that's the only thing that would separate him from God, because he couldn't live forever with this knowledge, and with the mind, or with the logical thinking mind that the gods had. So according to the Bible, that's why the gods took away man's eternity, immortality, and gave him mortality and kicked him out the garden, so-called. Well, that's a metaphor. That's a metaphor. That's a history lesson. That's a myth. Ancient people put lessons in history and myths. They put them in myths. A lot of the myths were about events, very important events that happened in a particular culture. And it puts all a mismatch up in a myth, and you have to fish it out. But anyway, the reason I was getting to that is because I want to let you know that that most of the Bible is myths. There's a lot of history in it too, real history, but most of it is myth. That don't mean it don't have power behind it. A lot of these myths have power behind it. The Bible, the Torah, okay? The Torah that we know today was written for a reason. I think I already told you where Northern Kingdom or Israel was overran by Assyria, and so a lot of refugees from Israel ran down to Judah. But these changes were taking place even before that. The king of Israel at that time, I think it was Josiah, the king of Israel at that time, was under the sway of a cult of priests who wanted only Yahweh worship and wanted Yahweh worship centralized in Jerusalem. And this also had to be because with the extra people coming down from Israel into Judah, there couldn't be like all these, everybody worshiping the different way, that way, this way. They all had to be centralized because it was different kingdoms that were coming down and conquering and such. And also, Judah was a small territory, and they had to have a lot of different people in the same space. More added from Israel. So if everybody just worshiped this one God, everybody just worshiped Yahweh and didn't worship nothing the ancestors, nothing else, which they had been doing for thousands, for about 400 or 500, maybe 1,000 years, and nobody bothered because it wasn't considered wrong until Josiah and his particular priest came in. Okay, and there's evidence in the Bible for what I'm saying. In places, they took a bunch of things that was written throughout Israel's existence, throughout Judah's existence, and a lot of it was calls to other gods and goddesses and ancestors. And you can see some of it in the Bible. I'll tell you where you can see some of that later. And the people were complaining, why are you tearing down our shrines and doing all? Now these are people that worship Yahweh because Yahweh was always the number one God. But Yahweh had attendants that, like he said, go handle my light work. Like one would handle thunder, I think he was thunder. One would handle this particular thing in nature, one would handle that particular thing. Just like in all the other religions of that time. Like in the Yoruba religion. So the original way the Jews worship is not the way they worship now. Josiah tried to say our ancestor, God told us from the beginning, Yahweh told us to worship this way, his way, when that's not true. The people had never heard of such. But since they completely destroyed the old way and substituted with this new way and brought the Torah out at the time of this substitution in order to solidify these new changes. Remember I told you writing was a spell? Because if you put, listen, when you see something in a book on paper, don't that make it more real? Don't that make it seem like it actually is the way? Isn't it hard to, even for professional scholars and such, to weave through that? That's why writing is called a spell, and that's why they wrote it out at the time when these changes was being made. So I'm saying to say this. HooDoo, first from Africa, and they knew that, they figured that they conquer us, yeah, because the white man, yeah, he did conquer us. Well, not at first. He had a lot of cooperation from Africans. But anyway, and then when he used the enslavement of our ancestors for free labor to build his society, make him even more powerful, Then he went back to Africa and conquered, colonized. While he had drained the Africans of manpower that could have built that whole continent up, manpower that went to use for his edification. That means building up. And then he came back and took the whole thing over. But what I was saying is, a lot of our ancestors, when they came over here and they saw that the white man had immense power, and they figured it must be his God. So now, first, the white man tried to keep the Bible from the black man, from the slave, for a long time. Most whites, I believe, like 80%, didn't want the slave reading the Bible, or if he did, he would have his appointed people here and there to administer this teaching and taught the way they wanted to be taught about being a good slave and obeying your master. Okay, so he didn't want the black man to see the revolutionary parts of the Bible when Jesus said, all those who rejected him or whatever, the four horsemen will come, and these four horsemen were not messengers of peace. And they saw where fire and doomstone was prophesied for the evil and wicked of the world. And also in the Old Testament, ain't nothing peaceful about that, brothers. Nothing. And the white man don't want the slaves to see that. I have found out that somewhere in the islands, West Indies, or somewhere, that Christianity inspired a big revolution. I forgot which island. That ultimately led to the freedom of slaves in that area by the British. No shit. I'm serious. I ain't bullshitting. I'm serious, brothers and sisters. But anyway, HooDoo, or group HooDoo, freed our people in hey, HooDoo, big for Christianity, brought about the Civil War. Let me tell you why I say that. There was no reason for the South to attack Fort Sumter, but just because Lincoln had got elected, their paranoia. You see, when you're doing wrong, and deep down you know you're doing wrong, but you try to project it out there like you're doing right, that thing in your subconscious will make you go and do something real stupid that's going to bring you down, get your ass kicked, and bring all your machinations down. I think that was the spirit of the Redeemer. I think it's the spirit of the Father or whatever. It was the spirit that the slaves called. They read in the Bible where it's God, Jesus, whatever. Say, if you call my name, I will free my people. I think that's more in the Old Testament because they were more in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, what was it? Jesus, he said, don't just keep praying and praying. Because don't you know God hear you the first time? And God won't want to hear you keep badgering him. So he's going to come down and do what you want. He might have said it tongue in cheek. If he said, I don't know, somebody in the Bible said it. But that's what happened. That's what happened. See, the Spirit's time, well, you might say, well, the Africans were enslaved for what, 300 years in America? Or 200 years or something? 1619 or 1965? You do the math on that. Why didn't he come earlier? Well, because if the being that's eternal, or eternity that is, that's like a week, if that. It's like the Spirit was giving these, it was like, okay, now when I move on these white folks, I don't want to say it. I didn't give them time to change. I gave them time to change. That was time for redemption and time for an ass kick. So that's all I got to say on that. Our slave and enslaved ancestors conjured up the Civil War by their, who knows what rituals were done, what dances and rituals, what sacrifices were done. Who knows? Because a lot of the stuff, most of the stuff, 90%, 95, 99.9%, the stuff is not written down anywhere. Okay? So, in honor of that, I'm not a Christian, okay? I'm not a Jesus person. I I think that this Jesus really existed in the spirit. I don't know if he ever existed in the flesh. I say spirit because that's the way you see church people praying to him now. That's the way you see people getting delivered now. So I think it was always that. Well, anyway, in honor of that, my ancestors, I used the Bible. I used invocations from the Old Testament. I used some roots and herbs mentioned in the Old Testament. Like in love spells, frankincense and myrrh is one of my favorites. I don't necessarily mix all the biblical roots in there. Like, and I use Proverbs. I think it's Proverbs. No, Song of Solomon, something like that. Where Solomon and Sheba are going back and forth about how they feel about the other person, about each other. And some of the roots and spices that are mentioned from Solomon about Sheba, I I don't remember them all right now, but when I want to do a love spell, I try to get as many of those as I can, or try to find a correspondent and use that. Most of the time, but sometimes I'll just use what's here, what's you know things that I have available to me. Like I use roses for a man to attract a female. I use lavender for a female to attract a male. Like she puts that on herself. Or she use it in a recipe to get the man lavender. The man uses roses, white roses, sometimes red, and other things. I will use a little bit of frankincense, a little bit of myrrh, things like that, and also I have her recite those scriptures, a few of the scriptures. Sometimes I have her read the whole thing and replace King Solomon's name with her man's name. And then in the end, she'll say, let's say his name is John. John, come back to me. John, learn to love me, only me. And the same with the male. Let's say we use Eve. Eve, come back to me. No, that's not. Let's say LaQuisha. If he's a black man, LaQuisha, come back to me. LaQuisha, learn to love only me. If it's white folks, I might use Buffy for a man. Buffy, come back to me. Whatever. Todd for a white woman. Todd, come back to me. So I'm telling y'all, the Bible has a recipe almost for anything in the Old Testament. You gotta check it out. It tells you what to do for certain situations. It's really a hoodoo book. It's the biggest one of the biggest hoodoo books in the world. Ever. The Bible is bigger, more powerful than probably any grimoire ever written, because all the grimoires was probably based partially on the Bible, on that anyway. You call yourself witches and stuff, and you get into like the European stuff like Wicca and real witchcraft and Slager. But I have you know that they pretty much do the same thing we do. They use the Bible and just about all their workings. The Bible is really the foundation of all that stuff. Truly, you go check it out. Yet a lot of them. Well, I'm not a Christian. Okay, I see a lot of holes in it, but I'm saying the conviction and the spirit of the people down through the age. You got billions of fucking people. You're not gonna pick up on that power. You're not gonna pick up on the power. Go get holy water from a Catholic church where billions of people then prayed over it and walk past and put pitties or what have you. You ain't gonna pick up on that. You're a fool if you don't. That's a large, large reservoir of spiritual energy. And I used to say Ashe because I used to be in Europe. I'm still in Europe in a way. You know, I was anointed for decades and warriors, so that's still on me. Okay? But I don't do any Yoruba stuff, and I'm really New African hoodoo, which means the hoodoo of. I use some of my ancestors, greatest African ancestors, as spirits that I go to. I think I told you that before, but on when I'm doing the pure hoodoo to bless a work, and I say the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, because that's really powerful, and our ancestors use that, and that's the pedigree that we have, and that's the anointing we have to do this work from them. So if you change it, you can. I mean, you can put your own in there. I put my own in there with the New African hoodoo. You can put your own in there. You know, you can do things a little different. You know, you your own man or your own woman, but you have to honor the time-tested traditional hoodoo that our ancestors brought forth to free us, to free them and us, and for our edification. They descendants. You have to. If you don't, it ain't hoodoo. But anyway, the reason I brought the stuff out about why the present Bible is how it is because when our slave ancestors reached out and kind of put an African overlay on it, they were doing the right thing because they saw what it was. They saw through it. No matter what the white man thought or told them. See, they didn't have the archaeology to see what what I told you about it here. They didn't have that archaeology then. A man named I don't think William Devers was in on the archaeology. He might have been. Yeah, he was, and others uh, uncovered this that I told you about. And I know the Bible says you were pagans all the time, but your fathers told you to worship this Yahweh. That's not true. Their fathers did not tell them that. Josiah and his group told them that and tried to establish that as fact, but it wasn't. Never was. That first temple in Jerusalem had rooms for many gods in it, and it wasn't considered bad or evil because everybody did it. Everybody. They worshiped their ancestors. Yahweh had attendants called they call angels today, just like we call on angels, and we give angels things that they need that makes them powerful. They have rings, plants, minerals, everything that goes with these angels, these different spirits. And most of the characters in the Bible, like Moses, was a sun god. They were different sons. They were different gods over different things, and then they got changed into heroes. Samson was a sun god. He got changed into a hero. So all this stuff, the books of Moses with sigils and people saying the name of Moses, it's okay. It's okay, y'all. We worship in the original way. Okay? But definitely, and those psalms in the ancient times was sung or hung in the temple in Jerusalem, and and wherever else in the shrines and stuff all over the kingdom that they in Judah that they worship Yahweh and His attendants. Like I said, you should start singing the song. But I'm just telling you, the Psalms were a mechanism to activate certain energies, just like it is today. Ain't no way in the hell I'm gonna throw that away. How come? Why? Look, why the Jews been beaten and killed and all that? I'm not saying they're good people. I don't agree with them colonizing Palestine like that. But Yahweh made them um, a promise. He said, "You always will. I will always let you be in Israel. You will always be." As a matter of fact, all the people that's there and the Jews originally from around that area. They were nothing but Canaanites who changed their affiliation and wanted to break the old affiliation with the Canaanites. But I'm not going to go into that all day. I went over too long as it is. I just want to let you people know that, and let you people know that you are sanctioned to practice HooDoo and use the Bible as its foundation. Even when you kill a motherfucker. Because a lot of those songs, a lot of things are curses, death curses. But only apply them when needed. Don't just put it on somebody because you want their man or want their woman. And don't do breakup spells unless you've done your investigation and it's warranted. Don't do spells that keep a person bound in prison or something or jail just because or because somebody paid you some money because they want to keep this person in jail while they go after their mate. Let me give you an example of why you would keep somebody in jail, and I'm gonna give you my my main recipe or spell to do something. Let's say a woman got a man. He taking her money every month, but you know what? If she want to do that, that's on her. Okay, don't fuck with him just because of that, because she may never find nobody else she likes. But if he's beating the shit out of her, and she may even like that too. But I mean, if he's dangerously beating the shit out of her, like knocking her down, just beating the shit out of her, and she got kids, and say maybe he ain't got to them yet, but he will or he has gotten to them, and she won't do anything about it. First of all, that bitch need her ass whooped. She won't do nothing about it. This nigga threatening her children, taking food off them babies' table so they could eat. Well, if I was a father, I am a father, and that was happened to my daughter. I think it's time to get my old shotgun and handle that myself. I don't think it'll get to the spell level. I'll probably be in prison. I'll probably be doing a spell to keep me out of prison. Because I'll blow that motherfucker's brains out. With a shotgun, specifically, to send a message. But you do a spell to keep, now that motherfucker, you do a spell to get him in jail and a spell to keep him in jail. The spell, I do geomancy. And there are symbols in geomancy. The symbol for incarceration, binding, keeping a person locked in one place where they can't move and they can't advance in life or anything. It's called carcer. It's carcer. Okay, I would use that in an X over the person's name in the X, and I would appeal to Bass Reeves, first black U.S. Deputy Marshal, to make sure this motherfucker stay locked up until he's out of the girl's system or until she'd have moved on. Maybe she got some therapy and got better, or she found a man that treats her halfway decent. But I'll tell you, a bitch like that be real. She ain't gonna never get a real decent nigga. She might get somebody that don't beat her ass, but he ain't gonna never treat her like she's supposed to be treated because different strokes for different folks. But at least you can get a nigga that ain't gonna really be a danger to them children, them kids. You understand? Straight up, that will be a danger to them kids. You keep them incarcerated. You take what you do is you draw. First of all, this carcer thing and X around the person's name, you make it into I really forget. I don't know what the fuck I'm forgetting shit for. Forgetting shit into a sigil. Like if you write things to bring your lover back. You put that into a heart sigil. You know how y'all know how to make sigils, right? But in this one, you just put the name parser in the act. You put the person's name and first name this way and last name that way. And you put carcer over it, many, many, many times. And then you make a sigil out of it. Because that way, it's prison all the way around. Can't get out. Can't get out this way, that way. That's like making it 3D instead of 2D. Well, I'm not going to go into that. And you can put a big candle over it to keep it like bam, sealed. Or you can put molasses on the paper and stick it to the candle, a black candle, and burn it. And you call on Bass Reeves, and you can draw a key, turning the cell shut, turning it, making it shut. And when you want to release them, you draw the key going the other way. So I'm not gonna give you go into a whole elaborate thing, but just gave you that. That's what I do because I use geomancy. Geomancy has these symbols like that. I believe what his car said. Is it Jupiter? No, it might Saturn, I believe. So you might even call on one of the spirits that's the spirit of Saturn and put that name into lace and make that name the sigil. You better look and see now. Geomancy, look up and see if car says Saturn. I believe it is. I never really got that deep with it. I never had to. I just do a little simple thing here and there and it works. But if I had to, you go as in depth with as many layers as you have to make the spell work. Okay. So there it is. Peace. Have a good day.